Yes, thank you, everybody out there in the Black Flame universe, for joining us for the second portion of the evening. My favorite, although metal is always a favorite topic of mine as well. So thank you all for joining us on Tracks of the Damned right before here. And, listening to our opening song, I know how much you love it, Robert. And, I'm sitting there going, we were just talking about how some of these new bands just suck. they created a new subgenre of metal called new metalcore, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Why can't we just call it music? It's heavy. Everything is heavy in its own way, and it's like always putting shit in a box, man.
Metalcore, more like metal bore, right? The bore, dude.
I mean, just straight metal is enough for me. We were discussing Baby Metal's new single and this other band called Ward 16 that just couldn't get down with it, man. It was terrible. But we are here for episode 3, and we got so much cool shit to talk about tonight. And you've been a busy boy yourself, man, between doing some roles and the main thing that I know has made me smile, as well as everybody else out there, that you've been, doing some podcasts, getting some traction on American Trash. How's that been for you, man?
I appreciate the love. Yeah. There's some people that get it,
and that's all that I know. Me personally, when you watch the film, it's like, are some of these folks actually watching the film, or are they skipping through it? Because there's so much depth there. I just don't. I mean, sure, some people are just brainwashed into thinking, that Charlie is just this hate mongering, no good for nothing, murderer and all this shit. They just don't get it. And I think that's, one of the things that they don't get about the film. It's not so much that, at least for me, that you're just trying to popularize, sensationalize Charlie Manson. It's about looking deeper into more of what he really was versus, I mean, obviously we all know that he was a criminal, and that's, you didn't have too much choices back in those days, if you ask me. But at the end of the day, I mean, he was on a different level. We've talked about it the first couple of episodes of the show. I mean, he's just on a different plane of consciousness. One that, most of us would just be, if we had that gift to be on that plane. And some of us are getting there, God damn it, and we're going to.
Outlaw.
Mm-hmm.
Musician, poet, shaman. These are the words that come to mind. And also, throwaway child. He was abused, man. He was abused. He was, he's a survivor. So the word I would say, poet, musician, shaman, philosopher, and survivor. An outlaw, because he created his own law as a way to survive in a world that didn't make any kind of sense.
Shit, the world doesn't make sense now.
Yeah. Well, listen, before we start, I just want to give some love and respect to Meredith Brown, who was kind enough to honor American Trash. If you look behind me, the tapestry, blanket, keep me warm at cold nights up north here. And take a look at that. American Trash poster. But a lot cozier than the actual, digital image. I can wrap myself up in it.
Hell yeah, man. And it should.
watch a movie, as she said. It's something you can wrap. I said, thank you, Meredith. Is this a blanket? Is it a towel? I'm not sure. Is it a tapestry? She said it's whatever you want it to be, more or less. But yeah, you can just look at it as something you can wrap yourself up in at night and watch a movie. I thought, oh, okay, cool, man. So thank you, Meredith, for being kind enough to support me and to show love for the film and send me such a wonderful, beautiful, considerate gift.
Absolutely. Can I buy one, Meredith? I would love to. I would love to have that as part of my boudoir. And I'm not bullshitting. I really would like one. That would be awesome. Aw, well, thank you, Meredith. That's awesome. Much love to you as well. Because, damn it, this film is one of a kind. And I'm glad that you're starting to see more people understanding this film a little bit better.
Well, I'm open to objective observation, criticism, or critique is a better word, because critique, I find, provides solutions rather than just leaves you hanging in the lurch without any answers. So I observed some of the critics, the Rotten Tomato critics that reviewed my film, and they liked it, but I also saw what things they thought could be improved on it. And I noticed that in today's marketplace, people like films that move at a very fast pace, and they don't like to watch long movies, basically. So I took some notes from these critics, and I went back into the editing room, and I created another version of the film that Meredith
Oh,
just
really?
edited. Yeah, it's an hour and 49 minutes. I tightened the pace, tightened some of the scene structures, and removed some of the superfluous atmospheric, emotional stuff that some people found a bit, I don't know, a little bit too slow and dragged on a bit. You know.
As
So I'm
long as it
open.
doesn't
I'm open.
lose the emotion. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Because those were the scenes that I loved so much. Sometimes it's, in your film, it's the absence of dialogue, it's facial expression, it's being able to feel the emotions that are going on in there without even having to say a word. That's why I think it's just a brilliant masterpiece. And I'm not just blowing smoke at you. I'm telling you, it's movies like that grip us, and they should sometimes. And if it makes you feel uncomfortable, well, fuck you then. Good. Be
Yeah,
uncomfortable, because that is real life. Life is not comfortable.
yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Meredith says, it's kick ass and perfect. I'm grateful to work with you on the director's cut. Thank you. And
I
thank you for
utilized
your tireless efforts there, Meredith. Damn.
well, I utilized a lot of her notes. She gave me notes on the film, and I utilized along with a couple of other critics. So
Nice.
yeah, but primarily her notes were very useful to me.
And we can always get better. We can always learn more. No matter if you're directing, if you're acting, shit, if you're just working on a set.
Yeah, it's the only way you can evolve. If you know everything, where do you go
Oh,
from there?
none of us knows everything, man. That's a life's pursuit. You
Yeah.
can't tell me one person that's got it all figured out.
Mm,
Some of, I think, have gotten very, very close,
agreed.
and my hat's off to them. I'm a student of life. You know me,
Yeah,
brother.
man.
I don't know
Yeah,
everything. I just keep learning.
yeah, yeah. I feel you. I feel you.
So as we're delving in tonight, we're looking a little bit more in depth with how La Cosa Nostra, to most people, just mafia or mob, has really been at the forefront, behind the scenes, pulling strings, and so much of their hand up of Mona Lisa's skirt, as it were, behind this whole thing. Surrounding Charlie and the Spawn Ranch and all those involved. Um, man, it's like I've been looking through the internet and I've just been finding like article after article after article. Guys like we were talking about earlier, Jay Sebring pops up around all these other actors and stuff, and obviously Roman Polanski, and it's just like how did it would never have flown in today's world. Like somebody would know something, somebody would drop the dime, as it were. But
Different
just
time,
how many
different
actors
different
are
time,
involved?
different time, different dime, my man. It was the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
and the Italian mafia controlled a lot of stuff. They controlled Vegas, they controlled the movie industry, they controlled illegal enterprise of drug trafficking around the world, Southeast Asia, the Golden Triangle, Vietnam, Korean War. They were just very powerful entity.
You know what's so funny about that? All of the quote unquote Italian American bosses were always to be seen or to be known as, oh, we don't do that. We don't get into the drug trade. We leave that alone because it's such a quick, federal get caught up, get fucked up for the rest of your life. But yet, there they are every time. And even myself didn't know just how much, because I mean, everyone has seen Casino, everyone has seen, damn it, Goodfellas, and they think all that shit was just like 80s, 90s, and forward. Now this goes back way, way back.
Yeah, it goes back to World War II, man. Let's
Now,
start. Let's
see,
start with World War II. Yeah,
let's start right fucking there because that is something I did not know.
yeah. Well, I mean, after Pearl Harbor, dude, like um, naval intelligence and the FBI worked
Mm-hmm.
together with Lucky Luciano, who was in prison at the time. They needed
No
his
wonder.
assistance. Yeah, his assistance because we were, battling Hitler, we were battling Mussolini in Italy, and he had shut down the mafia over there in Italy. And
Damn.
so, yeah, and so, basically, the FBI had brokered a deal, with the imprisoned, gangster Lucky Luciano, and in turn, he agreed to send out uh, mob, controlled Teamsters to patrol the New York City docks at that time because you know, they were like a target. The New York docklands were a main target of Axis infiltration, by German submarines, etc. So, he assisted them, with that part of things, and not to mention also that the mafia had certain tactics with, utilizing drugs and prostitution to as a tactic to gain information about what was going on over there. So I think between behind the scenes uh, methods of
Mm-hmm.
finding out information here about what was going on across over there in Europe, they were able to ultimately defeat Mussolini, tear him down, and then once that was accomplished, Lucky Luciano was quietly paroled out of prison for
Mm-hmm.
assisting the United
Well,
States,
sure. I
helping to
mean,
overthrow fascism, basically, through capitalism and drug sales and prostitution, all the things they utilize to infiltrate and to manipulate people to get information about what Mussolini was doing to basically take him down. They utilized corruption to go after corruption, man, and win the fucking war.
isn't that insane?
It's
Well,
crazy.
to me, it's not any more insane than the fact that the U.S. government employed German Nazi scientists to work, behind NASA and many various other things as well.
Yeah.
So not too much of a surprise, but I'm just kind of surprised that Luciano had the kind of reach back to the old country in order to find out any of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Meredith says, "I know, right?"
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. Kyler says, "My favorite thing about movie mafia compared to the real one is how serious the real ones are. Their behavior, their attitude, the way they speak. I mean, they were the legit deal. I mean, once upon a time when Reaper was not the quiet citizen that he is today, a lot of the Italian Goodfellas that I knew um, were no different. Although some of them pretty fucking stupid. Not like back in the day. They were almost like a soldier outfit, from the ground up, but still had the same headaches. It didn't matter what decade of the mob it was. Somebody always wanted to overthrow somebody. So Lucky Luciano sees a way out. Who wants to, spend the rest of time rotting in a box?
Yeah.
There,
That's
let's
true.
help the U.S. government.
Yeah. And
Mm,
the CIA's involvement in drug trade around the world is, I don't think is any surprise to anyone,
no.
especially when you look at the Golden Triangle, Southeast Asia, Vietnam, the Korean War,
Hmm.
and how,
Isn't that
the
kind of like the last lawless place in the world? Where I think they have literally have nothing. They have nothing stopping anything.
well, I mean, if you look at, Korea, it started with Korea, but then with Vietnam, they turned a blind eye because I think there was so much money being made,
Oh,
and the
goodness.
soldiers that were there were either, taking drugs to just bear either the boredom or the fear to fight that drugs serve, the heroin, the morphine, the marijuana, the LSD, whatever they could get their hands on to move through that indignity, that illegal war, that illegal conflict was
Mm,
acceptable. Not only was money being made, but the morale was low. And,
yeah.
I think the way a lot of the soldiers got, some of them, a good majority of them got through it, and it's not really talked about, it's kind of hushed away, was getting high all the fucking time, man. And that's why a lot of them, when they came back, there was really no help for them because of the state of consciousness of America was very hateful toward the Vietnam veterans. So there was not much help for them. It was just a lot of insults and pejoratives thrown at them, not understanding what they had been through and how they were pawns in a much greater scheme to commit, basically sedition against the United States itself. It was an illegal war, man, and men were used, and it wasn't a war that we really needed to fight, and a lot of people's lives were ruined on both sides of it. And so, but once again, organized crime and see certain powerful entities find a way to make money doing, make money in the midst of this crisis through drugs, selling drugs to the soldiers over there, just like they did in Korea. Same thing
Mm.
in Korea. So the organized crime's arm reached quite far around the world. It wasn't just here in the United States. It reached across the
Most people
globe,
don't
man.
realize that, I think.
Yeah. So yeah.
Mm.
But of course, Charlie Manson, he's the devil. He's the bad guy, right? He's the really
You see
bad
what I'm
dude.
saying?
He's a really bad guy, man. Watch out for Charlie. Hey, 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 kids, Charlie loves you.
And, he does. Because he wasn't about all that fucking noise.
It's all
Um,
good though, man. He had a
yeah.
lot of respect for them. He was friendly with Frank Costello when he was in prison. He was basically, an errand boy for Frank Costello. He looked up to a lot of those mob figures back in the day, and I think that's probably why when he, would have run-ins with the law, Charlie Manson, he didn't have any issue with parole. I think probably because he did so many, had did favors for them in prison, helped them out. That's the reason why. they assisted him with his musical career when he was paroled. And so, people say, well, Charlie was a snitch, and that this whole MK Ultra CIA thing. But I think it was more about that Manson had good relationships with organized crime when he was in prison. He was friends with Alvin Creepy Carpus. He was friends with Frank Costello. He was friends with a whole host of people that that appreciated him and how he respected them. And so I think it doesn't. I'm sure between the alliance of the mafia and the state government in California and their affection for Charlie, it's conceivable that he was released from jail because of this alliance to the mob so much, not CIA, man. That makes more sense to me than the MK Ultra thing. What can I say?
Same.
Yeah.
I really, the more we delve into this, the more, research that I do, it definitely seems like the mob is more behind everything other than, the MK Ultra thing.
Well, let's go to show business land for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about a film that most people have heard of. Maybe not everyone, but it's an iconic film, The Godfather. Remember that film?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Marlon Brando.
Yeah, man.
Ah,
Yeah.
still
A
a
lot of
classic.
classic, dude. But this is another example, I think, that demonstrates how, uh, even within the attempt to make a movie that authenticates as, as realistically as possible as Coppola could create,
Yep.
he still had to deal with the big elephant in the room, which was, you know, Russ Buffalino, the organized crime godfather in the East Coast. He had to basically concede to various agreements that he didn't creatively want to go along with. I mean, there's a
Mm-hmm.
if you remember in the film, there's a character named Johnny Fontaine, which is loosely
Yes.
based on Frank Sinatra, right? And originally, I think Coppola and maybe even a film producer, Al Ruddy, had approached Frank Sinatra to play that character, and Frank
He's like, fuck
Sinatra
no.
didn't want to. He, yeah,
Mm.
it was too much of a tipping of the hand sort of thing. He, clearly he was involved with them, and he didn't want to basically
Didn't want that to come out.
broadcast to the world in a film, right? So he
Right.
stepped down, and so then I think Al Ruddy offered the role to a guy named Al Martino, who was a singer and also actor, I guess, and he promised him the role. But
Mm-hmm.
Francis Ford Coppola had different plans. He wanted to hire a crooner of that time named Vic Damone. Have you ever remember Vic Damone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so he wanted him for the role of Johnny Fontaine, and was going to cast him. But then when Martini found out that he'd been xed out, he was enraged. So he contacted basically this his Godfather friend on the East Coast, this Russ Buffalino, and talked to him. And basically, here's the political aspect of it. Here's how the politics works. They couldn't get approval to shoot The Godfather in the Big Apple without this mob boss's permission. And so when Martini called The Godfather on the East Coast and said, "Listen, they outed me and they put Vic Damone in," basically it was along the lines like The Godfather. Don't worry, we'll make Coppola an offer he can't refuse, right? And so basically, they said, "Listen, we'll let you shoot in the Big Apple, contingent on you hiring, Al Martino, not this Vic Damone guy. So if Vic Damone is out, our guy is in." And so Coppola conceded, even though he was not his choice, but he had to play ball with them. And Frank Sinatra found out that that had happened. He was infuriated, and so he basically barked a bit how he was going to ruin Al Martino's career.
Oh,
And
sure.
so when Al Martino heard about that, he contacted the Chicago mob and talked to a friend of his there, uh, Sam Giancana. Sam
Yeah,
Giancana, I think that's how you
yeah,
pronounce
Anaconda. Yeah.
it. And told him that Frank Sinatra was seeing red and was coming after him, and said, "Don't worry about it. We'll talk to Frank, and Frank will calm the fuck down." And he did. And that was the end of it, man. So Vic Damone was out, Al Martino was in, and that's showbiz, baby.
I think Frank Sinatra just knew better that there was no reason for him to be involved in that film, with
Yeah.
everything that he knew and who he was friends with. I don't think they wanted him to be involved in that either. So honestly, that was a good move. But being upset about who ended up taking the role, come on, man. Sure, he's gonna be pissed off about it. Oh, you don't look like me, or you don't sound like me. Because I
Well,
think he kind of figured out that that's who they were basing that character off of.
yeah. I mean, in the film, it's I don't know if this is speculative or actual, but in terms of what really happened. But there was a film entitled "From Here to Eternity" with Burt Lancaster, Frank Sinatra, Montgomery Clift, and Donna Reed. Won many Oscars. It was a great film. And that came out in the '40s, black and white film, obviously. But point is that in the movie The Godfather, um, Johnny Fontaine's character comes to Marlon Brando's character, was Don Vito Don Corleone. That was the
Yep.
character's name. Yeah, and he
Mm.
tells him basically that this producer doesn't want him to be in this film, and that the producer's upset because I guess the Johnny Fontaine character stole some young harlot away from him, and now he will never hire this guy. And
Yeah.
Brando's character says, "Don't worry, we'll make him an offer he won't refuse." So he sends Robert Duvall out to Los Angeles, his consigliere, to speak with the producer and to basically, reason with him and see if he can get, you know, Johnny Fontaine back in the film, and basically bury the hatchet and move on. And basically, the producer tells him to go fuck himself, and then wakes up in the morning with a
His horse.
decapitated horse's head in his bed, right? And the next thing you know, Johnny Fontaine's in the movie. But I just find it curious though that Johnny Fontaine's character says there's this new movie, and if I'm in it, I'll become a star again, because apparently, I guess maybe if this is based on Frank Sinatra, his career, the trajectory of it was kind of, on the down slope, right? So the movie, he says, and would help regain his stardom, and
Right.
put him back up there. And so I just wonder if there is some kind of correlation to that as well, that Frank Sinatra did in fact broker some type of deal with organized crime, and maybe he in fact did piss off some producer in Hollywood because he slept with the wrong young lady and might have been
Mm.
X'd out of the box for a minute, and then they got him back in that film From Here to Eternity. I don't know. I just
No, I think you're
yeah.
right because there's quite a few songs
Mhm.
that old Frankie Blue Eyes did
Yeah.
that talks about how he falls in love on a whim.
Mhm.
It's romance after romance, and
Yeah.
he wasn't quiet about it. So that wouldn't surprise me in the least.
Yeah. Yeah. I dig the lyrics to his music. I can relate to a
Oh,
lot
me
of it.
too, man. It tells his whole fucking life story.
Yeah.
You just have to listen to it.
He's a bit of a fan. Yeah, clearly. I think he fell in love with the idea of being in love a lot of the times with the women that
And
he was
he
around.
actually says that in a couple of songs.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then the
I fly
reality
you
would
to
hit
the
him
moon.
hard in the face and he'd be out of there. you know, and
Exactly.
on to the next conquest, I guess, from,
Well,
maybe.
I mean, he had the
I mean, he's
mob
frank.
behind him. He was frank. Everyone was
Yeah.
in love with him. He was a
Yeah, man.
attractive guy, great voice. And
Yeah.
here he is traveling the world. Of course, he's going to break fucking hearts everywhere he goes.
Yeah. Good enough for Elvis, good enough for Frank. Right? Yeah.
Oh, shit. No, don't even get me started on Elvis.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
I mean,
fucking guy.
well, it's funny you bring up Elvis because, I did some research on that song. Was it Jailhouse Rock? And in the song, there's a lyric that says, "The whole rhythm section was a purple gang," and that reference, the purple gang was an actual gang in Detroit that was was a bootlegging and hijacking gang in Detroit. Yeah, they were actual criminals. They were the real deal. So he makes reference to them in the song, and I thought it was pretty bizarre. I caught it the other day because I was doing research on Thomas John Cummer, aka Jay Sebring, and Jay Sebring spent some time in Detroit as a young man, and got involved in criminality when he was young. And he wasn't a big guy, but he figured out a way to use charm, and was very cunning, and figured out how to basically deal drugs and be a delivery boy for the mafia there. He got in with them and figured out a way how to, make friends and sell drugs in what they, back in those days, they called Color Town. He sold to blacks. And what the mob didn't appreciate about his antics was that he was also getting high on the drugs. So it was enough for them to understand that he was selling to blacks, but what really upset them was that he was getting high, you know, and they realized that he was basically just, he didn't listen. He had a problem with authority apparently, and just on a whim would just do things. Luckily, though, I mean, at 17, he joined the military, and I think that might have, and went into the Navy for a while, and continued his entrepreneurship there, which is
No
a curious,
shit.
segue into what I wanted to talk to you about next.
Yeah.
Which is the relationship between Jay Sebring, aka John Thomas Crummer, can't pronounce his name, Cummer, Kummer. How do you pronounce that?
Comer?
Say again?
Comer?
Comer,
I think it's
Cummer. Comer. Okay, so
Oh,
Thomas John
no.
Comer,
Yeah.
Cummer. So Thomas John Comer changed his name to Jay Sebring because his girlfriend at the time, actress Barbara Luna, who appeared on a Star Trek episode in 1967. She was dating Jay at the time, and she said, "You need a flashy name to match your grand ambitions if you're going to open up Sebring Enterprises hair salon place," which was the cover for his drug trade. He needed something a little jazzy that Thomas John Cummer just wasn't cutting it, man. So she said, "Nah, you got to change your name, dude." So he did. Yeah, that's pretty wild. But
I mean,
yeah. Hmm? Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious, Meredith.
Yeah.
She says The Godfather is streaming on Pluto in 30 minutes.
Oh, how ironic. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Also, I think, we did have one question for you, Robert. Mortimer says, is there any other famous figure you would like to do your take on their life? Like if you were to put another, major person in history into a film of yours.
I don't know. I can't seem to shake my affection for Charlie Manson because I feel so much hasn't been communicated, other than Nicholas Schreck with his encyclopedia, you know, uh, the Outlaw Shaman, that book, and his documentary that's coming out. I think he's the only one, aside from George Stimson and Goodbye Helter Skelter, the book that George wrote, that do Charlie any kind of justice. I would love to make a film that goes into more detail about how things really went down. But aside from that, the only person that comes to mind off the top of my head to answer the question is Steve McQueen, because he ties into a lot of this. And I don't know if your listeners are familiar with a movie called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, if if you remember the film, there's some sequences at the Playboy Mansion where the Hugh Hefner character and the Mamas and the Papas, John C.
Mhm.
Phillips, Mama Cass, Sharon Tate, the
Yep.
Roman Polanski character, the Steve McQueen character appears in that sequence that communicates this idea of this kind of family of incestuous, celebratory whatever. It was the 60s, everybody's getting high, everybody's
Yep.
fucking, whatever. So I find it curious though that Tarantino decided to present the Steve McQueen character in such a way where it appears as if Steve McQueen is lamenting over the Sharon Tate and seemingly jealous because Roman Polanski ends up getting her, and he goes, "I never
Right.
had a chance." And if you do any research on this, like real research, that's not how it went down, man. Sorry, Mr. Quentin Tarantino, I don't really give a fuck
I
about
don't
you or
either.
your fucking lies, dude. You're part of the inner circle, so fuck you too. Maybe back in the day, dude, you had some balls, but hey, Charlie's here, so go fuck yourself. Um. Anyway, that's how committed I am. Yeah.
Foot
Um.
fetish, fucker.
Yeah. Yeah. So dig, man. But yeah, 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 yeah.
If you
No,
get shit
I ain't pulling any punches tonight, dude. I don't care.
there's no reason
I'm
to.
in bozo land, bro. I care less. Hey, Reaper.
Yes, sir.
Here's my feeling. These people aren't our friends. They're not our friends. So no, I'm not talking to the audience. I'm talking about these filmmakers. They're not our
Exactly.
friends. Okay. So, but my point about to answer the question again is to add on to that is that Steve McQueen curiously had a very troubled life. He grew up in a way similar to Manson, that he was awarded to the state. His mother basically threw him away. He grew up with a stepfather that beat him,
Hmm.
that abused him. The mother just kind of gave him up to this place. I think it's called the Junior Boys Republic in Chino. She awarded him to the state. She wanted him off her hands. So he was institutionalized very young, much like Manson, who Kathleen Maddox handed Manson off to the institution too when she didn't want to deal with him, when she wasn't out, robbing banks or being a criminal and doing what she did, because she did time. She just didn't know how to deal with taking care of her son, and so she just basically threw him away, just like McQueen was thrown away. So Manson and Steve McQueen share that, which I think is fascinating. I mean, really something, and to tie it in with Jay Sebring's earlier life, like Steve McQueen, had a lot to do with criminality. Steve McQueen, you know, as a young man, was very troubled, getting into, involved in, when he was in New York City in what was considered Hell's Kitchen back in the day. He hung
Mm.
out with junkies, counterfeiters, people who were basically criminals.
Yeah.
And so between that, his abusive stepfather, he was a very angry, kind of very violent man. Where Sebring might have been cunning and found a way to make money through, drug dealing and use his charm and charisma to manipulate. McQueen was much more foreboding and much more in your face, confrontational. And so, but I find it ironic though that both of these men, Steve McQueen and Jay Sebring, AKA, John Thomas Cummer, both ended up in the military because Steve McQueen went into the Navy, and so did uh, Jay Sebring,
Yeah.
and 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 Steve McQueen spent a lot of time in the brig when he was in the Navy because he got into fights. He was, he could not. I guess he couldn't basically conform to the regiment and the was it the regiment of discipline and obeying orders. So, and I find it funny too because there's a movie that Steve McQueen made called Sand Pebbles. I don't know if you've ever
Yeah.
seen it, where he plays a Navy guy who
That's
was
right.
also kind of out of sorts and a bit of a rebel rouser. And so I figure whoever made that film, I can't remember the director who wrote it, but must have been familiar with the fact that Steve McQueen spent some time in the Navy.
Oh, I
And
bet.
yeah,
It's like
and
they
so
created that film for him.
yeah, basically, I think so. And I think a lot of his persona and his very raw, you know, real approach to the craft comes from what he experienced growing up. He wasn't a fake. You know, he was, I guess, just using maybe movies as a way to deal with the rage that he carried. He said once in an interview that if he hadn't found acting or been an actor, he would have been a criminal. He actually is
Mhm.
quoted as saying that. So I found that fascinating too.
No, I actually relate to that in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Uh, depending upon what role I'm doing, I can put myself in that headspace. I can be like, yeah, that I remember that part in my life or that feeling, that emotion or whatever. So I always feel like real life experience is what makes an actor, period.
Yeah, or maybe also maybe it makes the the performance, the
Hmm.
presence genuine as opposed to someone just faking it.
Oh, we can
You know.
definitely tell who the fakers are.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a kind of a channeling of
Hmm.
sorts. Feelings, um, etc. That need to be
Yeah, like
expressed.
making peace with shit.
Yeah, yeah, it's a way to work through to get, I guess, to deal with your demons, or to get your demons out in a productive, healthy way. I think, and I think in Steve McQueen's case is that he started studying acting in New York City, and
Hmm.
um and then ultimately went on to do a Broadway. It had his Broadway debut in 1956, I think it was, and got some acclaim for that. And then not too long after, his big break was on a Hollywood series called Wanted Dead or Alive, and that's
Hmm.
what basically put him on the map. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But behind the scenes, he wasn't exactly.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. What were you gonna say? Yeah.
I was just gonna say, he's not the same on screen as he is in his personal life because obviously, he has something involved with all of this.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of the stuff with these men. It seems to stem from childhood, whether it was Charlie Manson, Steve McQueen, or Jay Sebring, or anybody else that has daddy issues or issues growing up in a home that's destabilized because of violence and mental illness and anything else. So
Hmm.
I feel like that because of Steve McQueen's penchant for drugs or hanging out with criminals, he might have felt more akin to being in that environment rather than hanging around, actors. I can relate to that because I still don't feel a kinship to, that's what people would call my thespian brothers. I don't just, I would, I would prefer to just, you know, hang out with what people would consider unsavory types, just like, some of these other people lives, and I read about them. I go, I can relate to that. Like you said, you could too. Um, but
Oh, yeah,
yeah. Uh, but I think what's
feel
also
that
interesting, I think,
100%.
yeah. But I think what's also interesting is how someone like Steve McQueen, right, this rough around the edge kind of man's man, tough
Hmm.
guy, no bullshit, would find an affection for someone like Jay Sebring, which to
Yeah,
me is the polar opposite of a guy who comes from the street, tough, not afraid to fight. Has got through his life with his, not necessarily with it, not saying that Steve McQueen was stupid, but got through with his ability to take whatever life could give him and just punch back twice as hard. He wasn't sneaking around,
right.
and playing games. J.C. Brink struck me more as a type to do that, hiding behind this facade, of something. Like his business, Sebring Enterprise, the hair salon thing. Although he did, you know, ultimately discover this technique of cutting hair that ultimately impressed Frank Sinatra. And once Frank Sinatra gives you a nod, man,
Well,
You're
sure.
made in Hollywood, and that's what basically put J. Sebring on the map as Frank Sinatra. But I digress, which is that basically J. Sebring and Steve McQueen became friends in this kind of incestuous Hollywood dynamic. Steve McQueen was dating Sharon Tate. Okay, to bring us back to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and he took her on their first date to the Whiskey A Go Go. You remember that place in Hollywood,
Oh,
West Hollywood?
yes.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
basically, and I think that place was owned by a guy. Let me see, check my notes. There was a guy named Elmer Valentine who originally was a police officer, I think in Chicago, and ultimately became a bodyguard, and then eventually went on to was the co-founder of the Whiskey Go Go, the Roxy, and the Rainbow Bar. Do you know the Rainbow Bar and the
Oh, yeah.
Roxy Theater in West Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard? Yeah.
Hmm.
So he went on to basically run those establishments, and rubbed elbows with a lot of famous people, and he became friendly with McQueen and J. Sebring. And their first date night, Sharon Tate, Steve McQueen, I think she was 22. There was a columnist named Joe Hyman who Sebring had expressed to him, because Jay Sebring had known about Sharon Tate. He's like, hey man, I have to meet her. I love her. I have a thing for her. So he basically introduced Jay Sebring to Sharon Tate the same night that Steve McQueen was on the date with Sharon Tate. Which is kind of, but back in those days,
Oof.
it wasn't like, yeah, but it was nobody gave a shit. I mean, here's the funny thing is it's also been, and I don't know who wrote this book, but there's some claims that a source says that Sharon Tate and Jay Sebring went on a sailing holiday together so it was Jay Sebring, Sharon Tate, Steve McQueen on a sailing boat together, and
Dang.
basically they took turns, man. They shared Sharon, and it was this, it was the '60s, man. So it wasn't
Well,
like,
sure.
oh,
Right.
so that kind of experimentation, I don't think it was necessarily good or bad. It was what it was. It is what it is, type of thing. So this idea that there was this coveting of her, to me, is ridiculous if you consider how these people were living their lives. And then right after that weekend, or that holiday, that sailing holiday, J- Sharon Tate and Jay
Event.
Sebring announced that they were going to get married. You know, um, and and obviously they never did.
Right.
They called off the engagement. But I mean, if you look at some of the stuff that was going on during all uh, these the parties and this
Yeah.
sort of lifestyle where it's just you kind of make it up as you go along. One of the things that was the thread that held it all together was drug experimentation. I
Yeah.
mean, Sharon Tate admits that she had some of her first experience taking acid with Steve McQueen. She would get high with him, you know,
Yep.
and then when she got together with Jay Sebring, he introduced her to cocaine because that was his thing. So when he wasn't, trimming celebrities' hair and doing their hairstyling, he was carrying he would and Nellie
He
McQueen,
was making it
Steve
snow.
yeah, yeah, man. He was he was making it snow, dude, all over town, bro. And Nellie McQueen said that Steve McQueen's wife was that he basically brought drugs into their household. She's quoted saying in her biography that he brought this corruption into their lives, and she hated him for it because she was believed that he was a big factor in the ruination of her husband's career and his life. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. So she wasn't a big fan of his briefcase, his scissors, uh, his patent haircuts, or his little packets of cocaine. She would say she'd have this suitcase with the scissors, this whole like setup to cut hair, and then little packets of cocaine that,
Well,
like you said, would be.
it's not like she said, "Oh no, please don't."
Well, here's another fun fact. Nellie McQueen, Steve
Mhm.
McQueen, Sharon Tate. and Jay Sebring all took acid together. So so while she's complaining about Jay Sebring selling, coke to her husband and
Oh,
other things like amyl nitrate, marijuana, all LSD, etc. And eventually, Steve McQueen's house became a stash house of all these drugs that he would hide because he was afraid that housekeeping would find it and snitch him out to the tabloids. So his wife was well aware of how paranoid Steve McQueen was getting over hiding the drugs, And
sure.
so, but ironically, like you said, she was also to some extent participating in the, you know, the tragedy of celebrity lifestyle, I guess, and all the
Yeah.
partying that's required, when
I
you're
just
in
think
that
it's
situation.
I think it's fucking hilarious though.
Yeah, it is. It is.
She's bitching
Yeah.
about, the fact that, Sebring did all that, but yet she's doing all these other drugs with all these other people. It's just like,
Yeah,
come on, man.
I know. It's pretty wild, dude.
Preaching to the fucking choir.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it speaks to you know, this paradox, a lot of contradictions, things that don't seem to add up. Like, if I like this, okay, here's another one. I'll throw you a curveball. Al Martini, the guy who called up the Chicago mobster to, basically warn Coppola to give him his job back, was
Mhm.
friendly with guess who? Vincent Bugliosi, the
There's the
prosecuting
tie.
attorney against Manson, right? So, and no one knows for sure, but apparently, according to some sources, mob sources back in the day, they had Bugliosi had done something
Yeah.
that had definitely the mob was hanging over his head. There was a woman that dated him briefly, some Vegas. I don't know if she was a uh, a topless dancer. I don't know if she was a cocktail waitress or whatever she was, but she dated him briefly and told one of her friends. She told Martini that
Mm.
he was abusive, jealous, and very intrusive and overbearing, and that's why she broke up with him. And I think most people, when they look at Bugliosi nowadays, they see a very manipulative, cunning, bullying type man who was basically full of shit, who was just out to make a name for himself, and lie as much as he could to gain the conviction. But when you hear more personal accounts of what he was like as a human outside of the courtroom, which was his
Right.
battlefield, which I understand, that he was not even in that sense, in a personal setting, very nice to be around. And so Martini defended Bugliosi and said to this woman that you don't understand, he's under a lot of pressure right now because of the trial, like, and he made up a lot of excuses. So you just see a lot of a convoluted mess, dude, that involves like people that are supposed to, you look at this idea of like the good guys, the bad guys, right? And we got, and when you look close at this stuff, you realize, wow, it's all bullshit,
Exactly.
man. Where are the
It
good
really
guys?
is.
I don't see too many
All
good guys in any of this. I don't see
Yeah.
bad guys.
There are no good
I just
guys.
see a mess. I see basically, basically Sodom and Gomorrah, dude. It's just, it's just a fuck fest. It's let's get high, let's fuck around. Okay, I don't want to. I'm not with. I'm going to break up with you, Jay. And who's this director? I want to meet with this Roman Polanski. Requested a meeting with Sharon Tate. Right. Next thing you know, she's auditioning for his movie, and now they're together.
Right. And
But
then
yet,
she's burying his child.
right. But yet, Jay Sebring is still hanging around Sharon Tate at the house. When the murders happened that night, Jay Sebring was there, and he would
Yep.
hang out at the house quite often. And Roman Polanski knew that they were together at one time, so and still went off to Europe and left them alone. So what you see is just this kind of like, you know, freeway pileup of blind drivers crashing into each other, whether they want to or not. It just seemed to happen because no one's really paying attention, or they are, but not enough, because they're too busy being stoned half the time, I guess. I don't know. But, you know,
Stoned and freebasing one another.
yeah, pretty much, you know.
So it's
Um,
like, uh,
but let's bring it back to Steve McQueen, because there was this guy, Marty Rassenhoff, who was a Sharon Tate's mentor. He was a film and television producer, and
yeah.
he recount, because you mentioned something about Steve McQueen behind the scenes. Well, here's some interesting information about it. He said that
Mhm.
McQueen would call him up in the middle of the night, freaking out, man. like just with like tremendous anxiety. And he said that it's like that's when the evil would come out. It was as if the devil had gotten a hold of him.
Right.
And my guess is probably because he was doing a lot of drugs.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, and the
He was
lifestyle
taking himself
itself.
to the limit constantly.
Yeah, man. I think that's ultimately, and what did him in. But and the funny thing too is, if you fast forward from when he started to really make waves in Hollywood with movies like The Great Escape, The Getaway. There's a whole slew of movies, and then the movie Bullet. He originally turned that film down. Remember the film Bullet, where he plays a cop? He turned the film down because he did not want to portray a police officer. And he made a comment that the reason he didn't want to is because the young people were referring to them as piggies, the teenagers, like, I don't want to play a piggy, man. And because he associated felt more akin to, outlaw, rebel,
Right.
those kind of, like Cincinnati Kid. He was a poker player, he was a card shark. He liked characters, he felt more suited to characters like that. But eventually, who do you think talked him into taking on the role, regardless, despite his feelings?
Sebring?
Exactly right.
Mm. Mm, mm, mm.
Exactly, because he would cut people's hair. He'd listen to them speak about their problems. The agony and the ecstasy of being a movie star, et cetera, blah blah blah. And he said no. He told him, do it, man. It'll be good for your career. Do it. Let's do it. And he convinced him to take on the role. Yeah,
Like he's selling them a bag of snow.
pretty much. Yeah, he was good at that.
Or with it.
He
Either
was
way.
good at that till until he went a little too far out with his shenanigans and started stepping on too many toes.
Yeah, it seems like everybody that was involved around the time of the quote unquote Manson murders
Mhm.
were all stepping on different people's toes. And
Yeah,
honestly, the people that ended up ultimately losing their lives didn't even really have anything to. I mean, it just looks like it even more every single time I go through this stuff.
yeah.
It has more to do with those that were behind the scenes.
Well, Robert Evans was one of the people that were behind the scenes because his studio relied heavily on mafia money to keep it afloat.
Mhm.
Lawrence Schiller, you know, um, Sidney Korshak was called the Fixer. He was a mob attorney. So
Right.
yeah, there was a lot of powerful men behind the scenes. And also, it's the same thing. Like same thing with Bugliosi. The mob. It's ironic, man. The mob had a lot of dirt on everybody. They had dirt on Bugliosi, which they basically is why they basically told him what to do, and he did it. Um,
That was their
and same,
golden ticket,
yeah, and same
to
thing
be
with
honest.
Same thing with Roman Polanski, man. They needed him to make a movie. He made that film. They needed, he got into trouble because he raped that young girl. He got her high and raped her. So Robert Evans and Sidney Korshak fixed that. So yeah, I feel that a lot of powerful men who abused that power, who basically uh, were in cahoots with organized crime, recognizing how powerful at that time they were, and
Hmm.
not just that, their reach went as far as the presidency, man. I mean, if you consider, some of the theories about Marilyn Monroe's death, the supposed suicide, JFK's assassination. There's
Right.
some theories that they were involved in that too. You know, and Sebring has been, uh, has been mentioned as a potential delivery boy of the drugs to Marilyn Monroe or to Kennedy when they were fucking and getting high. He provided, just like he provided Dean Martin with cocaine, because Dean Martin apparently had a ridiculous cocaine habit, and so Sebring
Damn.
provided Dean Martin with cocaine. So Sebring really got around, man. Yeah. But once again, he didn't get around without the organized crime element not being aware of things. They knew what was going on,
Oh yeah.
and so
Nobody could
he
shit in their backyard.
right. And I think I don't
Mhm.
know who the guy was in Vegas who did, because they were extorting people all the time in Las Vegas back in those days. The mafia was, and he didn't want to pay uh, them. And Frank Sinatra tried to step in because he was friends with this guy. I can't remember the guy. He had a big, he was known. He had a business. But the point is that Frank Sinatra talked to some of his mob friends to see, and he talked to the guy, very powerful mob guy at the time, and he said no, the guy has to pay. Right, so even Frank couldn't get him out of that, the tax that a lot of these people had to pay the mafia. So their grip on things, and Charlie referred to them as the Pope. He called them the Pope.
Oh
When the Pope
yeah.
makes a decision, the Pope, and he's not talking about the Pope of Rome. He's talking about La Cosa Nostra.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he made references to them quite often as the Pope. You know,
Well,
but
that was
yeah,
good old Charlie, man.
well, yeah, and
Talking
I
in
think
code.
and also with respect to them because he knew the kind of power they had, and he you know he had an allegiance of his own, regardless of what was going on. He stuck to that. Whether they were snitching each other out ultimately, or did bad business or were bullying, it didn't matter. He stuck to the code, which is you keep your mouth shut. You know, so
Exactly.
yeah. So for all the things that they've assigned to Manson as being devil, cult, guru, uh, sadomasochistic, you know, crazy. It's ironic that Sebring also is another one. There's a woman. Do you mind if I read something to you real quick?
Yeah, go right ahead.
There's an actress. I think let's see. Um, Print is kind of small, so bear with me. Um,
No worries.
um, she wrote a tell-all book. And magazine, Hollywood most desirable woman. Yeah, so there was one of those kiss and tell memoirs, called Lipstick and Legend. My
Yep.
scandalous stories of Hollywood, right? Um, Hollywood's golden era included an eye-opening whip and telltale that foreshadows the Cielo Drive crime scene, curious stage dressing, the way they found the bodies of everybody who had been killed up there. This
Hmm.
woman, who was a B movie actress, what was her name? Um, Bear with me. B movie actress, pinup model, journalist, analyst. Her name was Nancy Bacon. And her stage name was Bunny. um, and anyway, so Jay Sebring invited her to his mansion, right?
Hmm.
And he she said that he wore this black silk Japanese robe that stopped where his thighs started, a wide leather belt accentuating his ridiculously small waist. High-heeled black boots hugged his calves
Love it.
and stopped at the knees, standing away from his his thin legs. The robe was very carefully opened 2 inches down the front. Um, he wore nothing beneath it. He disappeared again, returning this time with the length of a rope. Yeah. Will you let me tie you? He was a small child asking for a treat that he was afraid would be refused. I nodded and looped the rope loosely around my wrist, asking, is it too tight? No, it's all right. I tried to catch his eyes, but his head was bent and he fumbled with the slim white rope. Jay, my voice pulled him up, and those dark, questioning eyes were upon me. She said, I don't like pain. Um, and she says, I'm not knocking it. I don't put anyone down for doing it. It's just not my thing. I
Hmm.
understand, he said. He said at length. He looped one end of the rope over a beam. Remind you of something? He looped it over a beam
Sure do.
Um, yeah, above the fireplace, and tied it, asking if it was too tight. I shook my head and watched as he secured the other rope to the other beam on the other side of the fireplace. Was I turned on by the new and bizarre scene? I didn't know. I only knew that I wasn't frightened, that I trusted him, and I was curious and anxious to see what he would do next. He sank to his knees and ran trembling hands over my thighs, my legs, my leather boots. He was so gentle, it felt like a butterfly wing, and I writhed I writhed against the hand, wanting it to be harder. But he stopped caressing me, and he reached for a bottle of perfume. He poured a large amount into the palms of his hands and moved slowly toward me and spread it over my breasts and belly and thighs. He filled his hands with another fragrance and massaged it into my skin. Again and again he reached to the coffee table, coming back each time with yet another scent, a cream, a lotion, a liquid, and he spread them over my body onto my transparent blouse, between the chain links of my heavy gold vest, over the draped gold belt, and slid them down my perfumed and slick legs. A lotion rested like whipped cream on the top of my boots and glistened like satin in the eerie glow of the flames. It mingled with the perspiration of my body and shone wet and gleaming, and still he did not stop. He caressed and massaged and spread layer upon layer of perfume onto my now reeking body. Then he took out a hairdresser's plastic bottle with a spray head, and he squirted me all over with warm water. The heat of the water sent the fumes up to my nostrils. Please, Jay, it's too much, he said. I pleaded.
50 Shades of Grey before it ever got written.
Dude, yeah. The odor the odor was reeling my drug churned head. The fire's too hot. I was surprised when he moved quickly and turned down the flames. Then he stood and surveyed his masterpiece. His eyes were seeing a beauty that only he could see. I was sorry that I was unable to share it with him. I guess I was even envious of his secret world. My wrists had begun to ache, and Jay was suddenly at my side, loosening the ropes, rubbing my wrists, and whispering, "Are you all right?" It wasn't bad, was it? It wasn't bad. And he kissed my he kissed my reddened wrists and smoothed my hair back from my damp face and wiped the perspiration from my forehead. I sank to the floor and I asked him why. He lowered his head, and the flames made the dark sweat curled hair make made the dark sweat curled hair glow auburn. He scooped up a spoonful of cocaine and sniffed it
Of course.
in jerkingly. He held it he held it for me, and he did not answer me. Instead he said, "Can we do it again? As soon as you're rested."
Right.
He returned wearing a black satin hood that covered his head and shoulders. Two holes etched in the black leather enabled him to see his way into the room. In his hand he carried a small whip with several thongs of leather, each tipped with a knot. I began to get frightened. "No, Jay, not the whip," I said. I was helpless. The ropes were loose around my wrists, but tied to the beams, and the loops were too small to allow my hands to slip through.
Mm-hmm.
"I won't hurt you," he said. And I was shocked by his voice. It was hoarse, deep. His breath came fast from behind the satin folds of his hood. "I won't hurt you, please." His voice was muffled, sounding of pain. and tears, and I longed to free my arms and hold him. It's all right, I murmured. Then, unaffected by my plea, I began to sob. Don't, don't, oh God, don't, Jay. Jay cried and began tearing the hood from his head and clawing at the ropes on my wrists and ankles, freeing me. He kicked the whip away and turned his back and wept. I looked at the thin, stooped shoulders, racked now with the effort of his sobbing. My eyes fell upon the discarded whip, and next to it, there on the floor, gleaming dully in the dim light, was a long carved butcher knife.
Well,
My
now.
heart my heart leaped in my breasts. He leaned his head in his hands as I turned away from him. I don't know if he heard me. I didn't try to be quiet. I grabbed my things. I fled out of that dark house. I ran, grasping for breath, tears blurring the stone steps, and my heart beating a wild tattoo against my ribs. I didn't look back, don't remember getting into my car, but suddenly I was turning onto a brightly lit Benedict Canyon, and my legs were sticking to the leather seats, and the thick, sticky sweat odor of perfume assaulted my nostrils, and I put my head on the steering wheel and I cried like a baby. Now, this
Ooh.
woman, this woman, Bacon, Nancy Bacon was friends with Charlie Manson.
Hmm.
This, and
Sure.
so some suggest that the reason Tate's body was found the way it was, with the rope and Jay Sebring connecting the
Yeah.
two, was a fuck you back to what this guy tried to do to her, which is basically kill her, man, or torture
Right.
her. It was the precursor of like sadomasochistic,
Yeah.
thrill ride, but yet he's got a fucking butcher knife on the ground, dude. Like
That's what
that's
I'm saying.
yeah, what's that about?
We
You
went
know?
quickly from S&M to
Yeah,
bloodletting, and
yeah,
unless that's agreed upon,
yeah,
you can't bring a butcher knife to that party.
yeah.
Woo.
So I mean,
Mm.
what does one come away with something like that? Which is that, is it karma? If you continue to live a life that involves a sort of debauchery and playing, a sheep in wolf's clothing type of thing, and
Yeah.
you mess with some of the wrong people, the wrong female that's connected to somebody else. Do you know what I mean? And so when I look at how that scene was staged, the massacre at Cielo Drive, there's a lot of speculation. Did Charlie go back and rearrange the bodies? Did they do it intentionally because of information they knew about these people? Because they knew Sharon quite well, more than people realized. They knew what Jay Sebring was about. Charlie and his girls, so to speak, or the girls, were
Yeah.
not naive to what was going on with these people any more than they were naive about Dennis Wilson, man,
Right.
or Brian Wilson. So they knew that there was a decadence in the way that they all lived, and so no one, if everybody is guilty more or less of that type of lifestyle, or then if any, but is there a line that you don't cross? Where you say, okay, enough's enough, and now, and I think the line was the drug the drug line, dude. It wasn't, I think, even so much about, you know, uh, these people's uh, very
Oh, sure.
disturbing, thwarted sensibility of, or lack of sensibility about the way they entertain themselves. It was more about that once the drug thing started to get out of control and drug burns were happening, then whatever past grievances there were, they there was some get back on that. Oh, you hurt one of these girls, Jay. You like to bully women. You like to do this. Okay, you like to do Sharon. You like to do this. Oh, you guys all like to play these kind of games. Cool, man. We can go there with you. You know, so, so
Well,
I just think,
sure. I mean, the mob, especially being the stone cold killers that they are, it's like they'll make a statement. Especially if they felt something strongly about that.
Yeah.
Uh, and people who did certain things, they were very, I know it's kind of weird to say, but, you know, very judgmental. They didn't take kindly to those kind of things. So to make an example, well, they make a fucking example,
Yeah. Agreed.
especially in them days.
Yeah. 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 I mean,
I don't think Charlie would go back and rearrange anything at that
yeah.
point.
George Stimson doesn't think so. In his book, he makes a blatant statement that he does not believe at all that Charlie went back and
Mm-mm.
rearranged anything. Nicholas Schreck has a different take on it. So who knows?
Well,
You and I
I
weren't
mean,
there. No one's ever going to really know the entire truth. But it's still, I know I've said this before, but it's just a bit odd to me and speaks to something that guy Charlie Barron did call Sebring Enterprise the day after the murders and told that guy,
mhm.
one of the Sebring's colleagues, that he didn't have to worry, that he was in the clear because the guy was
You
just
see,
simply a hairstylist. So they already knew that the people had been killed up there before the media had even gotten a hold of it. So they knew
right?
exactly what the police knew, maybe more, So I don't know,
Oh,
dude. I
sure.
just feel like if Jay Sebring was getting out of line and his greed, because there's a lot of information about the way he lived his life. He lived beyond his means quite often and took risks.
Mhm.
And a lot of his practices were, unscrupulous. And I think this is why Nellie McQueen detested him and hated the fact that Steve McQueen and her husband were friends with this, what she considered a lowlife.
Yeah.
But they did share, they did both like race cars. Like Jay Sebring had a thing for fast cars, and so did Steve McQueen. It's noted that Steve McQueen used to like the race cars, and they also, had a thing for Sharon Tate, man. So they definitely had those two things, and drugs. They had those things in common. But anyway, I just, you know, I just feel like, when you continue to get out of line, after a while, even if you've served the organized crime element for X amount of time,
Mhm.
they're gonna pull your card eventually. They're like,
Oh,
enough's enough. You're
yeah.
done, dude. That's it. It's over. No more love. You know,
No, they only
you're
tolerate so
finished.
much
Yeah.
before they
So
decide to make an example out of you.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And I just think it's. Don't
all
you
of
think
these
it's kind of.
actors.
Yeah. Say again. What?
I was going to say, all these actors, directors, entertainers, they'll tolerate you so far. And eventually they're going to be like, okay, well, this isn't funny anymore because now
Yeah.
you're pissing us the fuck off. So,
Yeah. Yeah. But once again, I feel like it just helps me and help it resensitizes me to the reality of what I see when I go to the ranch, when I just go
yep.
there. It's still very active in Chatsworth, like the property
You
itself.
see, yeah, and that was the next thing I wanted to get into was the sacredness of that place.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
definitely on my list of pilgrimages. I would love to go there with you and just feel the fucking energy of that joint. It's got
yeah,
to be off the fucking chain with energy.
yeah,
I'm sure there's probably even like, do I really want to say ghost activity? Maybe, but the fact that there's just nothing left. They just leveled that whole fucking ranch.
Well, there's stuff there. They just pushed it over the cliff. So there's bottles at the base. If there's cars down there, there's a. They
Fucking
pushed
hell.
basically they pushed the horse corral over one side of the ledge. They pushed the saloon over toward the back part of the ledge. They pushed George Spawn's cabins onto the right side. They pushed it all over the side, and it fell down. So if you go down deep into that gully,
Mm-hmm.
you find foundations. You find all sorts of stuff, bottles,
Mm.
artifacts, things. There's it's the ranch is down there, pieces of it. You know, it burnt
Yeah,
clearly,
yeah,
but
yeah,
whatever
yeah.
didn't get destroyed in the fire, bottles. There's barbed wire that surround the horse corral that's still on the actual property. There's all
Mm.
sorts of things down there, man, that if you look at them, you know that they are another time. You know,
Fuck.
so there's stuff still there. Foundations of the building. If you once you walk off the road into the ranch itself, which is all just greenery now, just bushes and stuff, you'll find the original foundations of where the building stood on it. It's broken apart. It's still there. You'll find like wood that's been burnt, that's been there for a long time. You can
Mm.
tell some of the stuff is like not, yeah, it lives in a time warp there. That's still there's stuff
For
down.
real.
They didn't clean it all up. You find things. You know, I found like an old pocket watch, rusted, like one of those old ones.
Damn.
It looked like 30, 40 years ago. I picked it up.
Mm.
So there's
That
a
makes me
lot of
want to
things
go
that are
even more.
still there. Yeah.
And so do people still kind of demonize that area even though they did all that?
I think it's more about an exploitive uh pilgrim can't talk. It's more of an exploitive pilgrimage. I can't say the word pilgrimage.
Pil- yeah,
Help me.
pilgrimage.
There you go. That word. You know, that's what happens when you're missing teeth, dude. Um,
Oh, it's all
so
good,
yeah,
brother.
yeah. So I think yeah, the expeditions now have a lot to do with that show Chaos that came out. And once Nicholas Schreck's documentary comes out, I think it's gonna become like a tourist thing. People are gonna go there and go, yeah, man, this is where it happened. So I think it's just more about demonizing it, not understanding what it really is. Just like people who make movies, you know, using Manson's music, you know, and not really listening to lyrics and trying to marry it to something that has nothing to do with what's being communicated in those songs, man. The place itself is not eerie to me. It's actually one of the few places in Los Angeles, or not Los in Southern California, that still feels like it's of a different time because it hasn't been the corporations haven't come in and
Hmm.
taken all the character out, haven't ripped up the land and you know and built these soulless monstrosities, man, that you can't even ground
No,
yourself. You
no.
can go there and still,
Environmentalists themselves should be like
yeah.
trying to get in the forefront of that shit just to stop it.
Well, there was a
To-
guy, I don't remember his name, but he tried to buy it, and he was building a bridge or something, and it collapsed, and he fell to his death. And then once that happened, the city took it back. So there was some independently wealthy guy who did take a run at the ranch and try to, you know, covet it for himself, but he was killed in the process. It's
that's what
kind
he
of bizarre.
gets.
Yeah.
He
So
was
since
trying to
then,
deface a
yeah,
monolith.
yeah. But I
You
think the
know,
clock, yeah, but I think the clock is ticking, man. I think it's just a matter of time. If either somebody gets hurt down there, where they'll build a giant fence, and it'll be like you can't even go on it anymore. So anybody, I don't, I try not to,
man.
I try not to uh, inspire people to go.
Hmm.
I don't try to, you know, recommend they go. The less people to go, the better. If you have to go because it's in you to go, because it's just something that you feel connected to,
That's
then
how
do
it
it.
is for me.
But
For me,
people
it's
go, yeah,
more of that connection.
yeah. But a lot of it's just like, you know, spookorama, man. Well, let's go here because this is where it happened. This is where they
Ah,
killed Shorty. This is where they dumped Shorty Shay's body. This is where Steve Groden showed them where the body was. This is where this. So it's a lot of that, you know, and so people get excited about the macabre aspect of it, you know, the ugly aspect of it, rather than, you know, what else is
there's more
going
of a
on.
spiritual sense there, though, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah,
I'll never forget that video that you took for me where you would see Charlie's name etched in the stone. It's like I don't want to see that go.
I know. There's a hike you have to go down a cliff. You kill yourself doing it, but you have to get
Sure.
that gets you down to where the waterfalls are. They're dried up around this time of year, but once the summer's over, they fill back up again. So
Hell
there's
yeah.
still these reservoirs of and remnants of the natural habitat that suggests why these young people back in that time were so drawn to it, why they sang songs and made beautiful music and just lived off the land. They did their duty to George Spawn and cleaned the stables. Charlie,
Hmm.
picked up shit just like everybody else. They did what was required of them so they could of them so they could live there. And what I get from the documentary that Robert Hendrickson put out called Manson, when you observe it, you just see them. They just seem to be just like at one with the land itself. There was horses. It was just
Hmm.
and there was a lot of
Some
places to
beautiful
go.
shit.
That yeah, and you can see it even now, and even after the city clearly Los Angeles has decayed, and things have gotten dirtier and dirtier over the years. But when you go there, in certain times of the year, you can see how beautiful and quiet it is there, man. There's nothing indicative of some horror show. And people may say,
It's like,
well,
what
it's
are you
because that a
expecting to
lot of time
see?
has
Are you,
passed. Yeah.
are
Hmm?
they expecting to see, bone fragments and, all this? I don't know what they're hoping to see, but it's beautiful nature. If people just really realized what that place symbolized, what the energy raised there, there's no ghosts there. It's just energy, man. Just
Yeah.
spiritual fucking energy.
Yeah. Always is always forever. You know. So one is one, because there was no like it was just being connected to earth and no
Right.
separation. Being feeling, the energy like you talked about coming up from the land itself and enjoying riding horses and being getting away from the matrix of that time. And what did Lynette Fromm say? She said, Charlie took us from our families and he gave us back to ourselves.
Right.
And so that's the part that makes sense to me. All the other people that project something onto him that he couldn't live up to, that's their trip, man. That's, if they wanted him
Hmm.
to be something and he failed to be that, that's not his fault. That's just their own expectation of him not being able to live up to it. So there's people that to this day, Susan, what was it, Sandra Good and
Hmm.
Lynette Fromm, who still are still, in their heart, they're still there, man. They haven't,
Oh
they didn't
no, I don't
suggest
think they
that
ever
they
left
were,
there.
yeah, in their hearts. I mean, I don't think there's anything yeah, exactly, that suggests that they, begrudge it, you know. I think if they
Mm-mm.
went there now, they would probably be very sad to see what it's become
Very.
because they probably remember how it was and how much life was there. But what are you going to do? My hope is though that it'll stand for a while and that between the rattlesnakes and the poison oak that's there, uh, people will stay clear once they realize that it's not as benign as they'd like to believe in terms of just the environmental aspects of nature that sometimes have to poke you every now and then to walk carefully. So we'll see. I don't know what'll happen, but like everything else, it just seems that the city ultimately the money and the power structures decide that eventually they want to remove anything that suggests life and or organic substance. They want to replace it with some man-made contraption that you can't ground yourself, that has no spiritual anything. It's all about consumerism and sensationalizing a place or a thing, and exploiting human beings to be good little consumers and walk around in shopping malls. They don't. They want to build a. They want to make the barrier bigger and bigger to disconnect man from
Hmm.
source, from the source itself, which is life. The trees, the earth, the water, all those things are getting buried underneath cement and garbage and plastic and steel and homelessness and sewers and and fire debris. you know, and fast cars and trucks, you know, get out of my way. I own the road,
Right?
you know.
It's like they want it to be just one big giant concrete jungle.
Yeah.
There's no beauty in that whatsoever.
Not to me, you know. I agree with you. I don't feel there's anything beautiful about that. It's to me that's a nightmare. We went up. I went up to Box Canyon not too long ago. It was originally called Fountain of the World with Krishna Venta back in the day. He got blown
Mm,
up. He was starting a religion there, and he had all these women that were his wives. And I guess some of the people of that time that were very uptight, conservative, didn't appreciate that he was starting his own religion in Box
mhm.
Canyon, and so they blew him up. But the foundation is still there. Like the front house is still there, the boulder's still there, but the structure where he was is all gone now. But there's pictures of it. And Charlie
Hmm.
used to go there. Charlie Manson, they used to go there a lot. So it's not that far from the ranch,
Oh, okay.
Box Canyon. Yeah. It's
Oh, that
called
sounds like
Fountain
a
of the
good place to
World.
check out as well.
Yeah,
Just cause, you
yeah.
know.
Well, that was the place that Charlie had his sights on for a while. He wanted to go up there and create like some type of community. And then Shorty Shea had his own ideas about that, you know, and started saying, you know, talking dirt to George Spawn about it. I think that's one of the reasons he ended up dead. Who knows? I
I
wasn't
mean,
there,
what
but
the you know, most people wouldn't. I think wouldn't last in a community like that because they just don't. They don't have the spiritual self. They don't have the mental fortitude to just be in nature. You know,
yeah,
I personally I try to get out as much as possible. That's why I live in a small town with only 5,000 people. It's mostly
smart.
country. It's not oversaturated,
Yeah,
you know.
that's
And
what's so
I think
bizarre
I will
about. That's what's
always
so
do that.
bar. Yeah, well, that's what's so bizarre about the ranch in the middle of Chatsworth, which has changed a lot over the years. You still
Mm,
have this place, man, that's living in its own time, man. It's like literally step in that. You know, that's why I'm just concerned. Like, how long will they allow that before they build a fence around it, tear it down? You know, the bulldozers show up, they start digging up the dirt. Next thing you know, there's a, you know, some, you know, who knows, another church, another some type of structure. You know, who knows? They would build there some, you
that
know,
would be
corporate,
straight up
some
ass.
yeah, some corporate office or something. You know,
Oh, fuck that.
to sell more plastic to the people so they can dump it in the oceans and the dolphins
Right.
can show up on the shore having seizures because they've
Dude,
digested
I
poison.
saw that shit.
Yeah, yeah,
And they're all mystified. Like, why is this happening? Oh, a billion different fucking reasons.
yeah, yeah.
Fuck.
That's what Otwa is about: air, trees, waters, and animals. That's what I was trying to convey in American Trash. That's why I utilizes Charlie's philosophies and his you know, he was so adamant about these things
Right.
along with other people, you know, because you know,
Yeah, Grindhouse Ghoul had it right.
what did Grindhouse School say? What?
uh let me see if I can find it right here. There we go. That was their comment at WA.
Otwa, yeah, man. Right on. Yeah.
It's like if
So
I don't know. I think there would be enough people like ourselves, and I mean, at least I hope that that shit would be protested. I'd be
I
more
don't.
than
Yeah,
happy to do so. It's
yeah,
like taking down an
yeah,
ashram. You know what I mean?
yeah,
At least in my
yeah,
opinion, can't let
yeah.
that shit go.
No, yeah,
Mm-mm.
yeah. We'll see. Maybe we can
Mm.
make a documentary about that. We'll revisit the ranch, or I'll do something like that. Who knows? We'll do something. I
I would
wanted
do
to
that
do
with you in a
something like that.
heartbeat, brother.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
guarantee it.
Resurrect the ranch. Yeah, yeah,
Why not?
yeah,
Nobody else wants it.
yeah. It's true.
How can you put a
Yeah,
price on spirituality?
you
That's the way
can't.
I look.
Yeah, yeah. You can't.
My goodness.
But yeah.
It's like the
No.
deeper we go, man, it's just like,
Yeah.
Cody says it right, I think, here too. He's like, yeah, they'll build another Dollar General.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably. Every time
Yeah.
there's like a place that has nothing, which is fine, maybe it'd be a farming community or whatever, they got to build a motherfucking Dollar Tree and a Dollar General. Has to
Yeah.
have it. No more mom and pop stuff. Damn, I miss those days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
I don't know. But I guess um that's why I guess there's these wonderful books to read that have pictures in them, and there's literature, and
Yeah.
there's I guess you can visit sites still. I mean, they can't eradicate the entire landscape. They might build stuff, but even with these new structures that appear, they're sitting on something, and that part is still there. So I mean, if you could use your imagination and just kind of black out that shit they make, and then see what's behind it, then you get a sense of that what's
Oh yeah, I'm
going.
a big
Yeah,
believer in that. It doesn't matter what they pile on there.
yeah,
That energy will always be there.
yeah. I just wish that there would be more people that would come forward, and I'm glad Shrek is around, and glad George Stimson is around,
Mm-hmm.
um, and
Got to
Manson
get him on
Archives.
this show.
Yeah, man.
We need to do
And
that.
yeah, Manson Archives. I'm friendly with them. James, he's a really great guy. He's a proponent of this. I just wish there'd be more people that would be active in making documentaries or films that communicate a different narrative than what's been put out there. But I guess it's just a sign of the times. It's the time, the world we live in. It's what we're living in right now. People, I guess, don't want that. Maybe there's a percentage of people that do, but I think the majority desire something else, or they don't want to be told how to perceive a particular subject. So if it's Manson or anything else, if they've already made a decision about it, it's like religious people trying to it's like trying to basically wake them up from a fundamental belief system since childhood or what they've been programmed as their identity. It's like death, the shock
Yep.
and gravity shift of having to let go of that is too frightening. So they will either kill you, mock you, or just tell you you're crazy, and they want to stay in that line of thought. You can't get them out of it. It's like when that guy was interviewing Manson about that ridiculous book Neil Emmons wrote called Manson in His Own Words. And he says, "Well, Charlie, what do you think, you can teach people with this book?" He goes, "I don't know. You tell me. What can you teach other people?" So even back then, he saw how futile it was to try to teach people anything. So I don't know, man. I mean, I'm not saying it's hopeless. I'm just simply saying I think there will always be a very small percentage of the population that will get it, and then the rest will get something else. I'm not saying there's us and them and they're wrong, but
Right.
they're clearly on a very different journey than you and I.
Yes.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to meet like this. I'm grateful that we can meet like this and talk,
Me
but
too,
there's not
man.
too many. But there's not too many people that you can talk to, and you bring up that name, Charlie Manson, or anything else. There's a pause, dude. There's a fear. And that's just the programming. That's the programming reacting. That's not even them understanding anything that really went down. It's something else. They think, oh, that terrible. They think about the baby. They think about the actress. They think about this butcher's nightmare thing. But they don't understand what led up to it and why it happened. Well, we were told, we know what led up to it. We know who's responsible for it. And this is, to me, if there's any skullduggery and witchcraft, black magic, it was Bugliosi's and Paul Caruso's, Richard Caballero, Lawrence Schiller's ability to manipulate that trial circus and make the whole country and the world believe in something that just simply was not accurate. It hinged so much on Susan Atkins' testimony, the lie that she
Mhm.
told for the sake of immunity or to get money or not die in the gas chamber. They coaxed her into that, and then she rescinded it. So much rests on fabrication and not what really went down, because so much would have been exposed that they couldn't have that. So a lot of people were sacrificed, just like the people at Cielo Drive were sacrificed. Other people's lives were sacrificed too, man, for the sake of an agenda, which once again brings it back to the politics, the organized crime element, show business's power. Because back in that time, show business, Hollywood was synonymous with organized crime. It was the same thing. They weren't separate. They
No,
were the
they were
same
a
thing.
unit.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what needs to be considered. But maybe
Yeah, they were just
nowadays people
protecting
have
their
a
own
more,
asses.
and with the P Diddy,
Ah!
fiasco, now maybe
Yep.
there's more people are more open to the possibility that and not so quick to fall in love with these Hollywood icons, or this
It's
idolatry that
not too
people are so.
different when you think about it. And I was actually just contemplating that the other day because I had put up a meme on my page that somebody had made. It was P Diddy as one of the soldiers in Call of Duty, although it was called what was it, Call of Diddy. And I was sitting here thinking, how is this any different? How is any of that different from what was happening back with surrounding Charlie? It's no different. It's just that people caught on to it and somebody wasn't afraid to fucking blow the whistle.
Yeah, yeah. And we're living in a different time now, where
Right.
like what was considered taboo back then, the sex tapes, of
Right.
Yul Brynner and Peter Sellers, etc., Sharon Tate having sex with men. All that stuff, was clearly like a no-no. Nowadays,
Mhm.
people's careers are built on, or instant fame because of a tape that was released with famous people having some type of sexual, you know, adventure that, gives you status. Back then, it destroyed you. So
Right.
it's a different time we're living in.
That shit came out, you were done.
Yeah.
There
And
were
a
no
lot of
hot
movie
Tua
stars.
girls back then.
Well, yeah, in America, I don't think was ready to accept that some of their male macho heroes were homosexual. That would and
That
that would
was
have
an eye
destroyed.
opener for a lot of folks,
Yeah, that
yes.
would have collapsed the whole a good portion of the studio system right there, man. So they had to bury it, and and create this dream factory, which I totally understand. I get that. Um, but I just wish
Sure.
people would come into 2025 and wake up. But and some people are, but I think if they keep making more documentaries and movies that utilize the Manson archetype and take the music, and they don't even understand what they're doing with it. They're just doing it for an effect to get people go, ooh, wow, this must mean it's authentic. No, it's not. You just don't even. You're just using it to send a message, and it's once again, you might as well
It's the
just
wrong message.
wear it. Yeah, you might as well wear, get a T-shirt that says "I love Vincent Bugliosi," man, because you're just helping to,
Right.
feed his party line
But
with the
yet you
same
don't see
horseshit.
anybody doing that featuring, Jim Jones, the whole Jonestown thing. You don't see anybody doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's my whole problem with it. It's like, why do you just keep picking on Charlie? Is it because Charlie was a musician, a brilliant musician, a poet, and like you said, shaman, outlaw? Is that why? Or, how many other actual cult leaders that were proven cult leaders that you could use? And honestly, shame on you if you're using cult leaders to sell your fucking product. Fuck you. It wasn't even your idea. You're just trying to seem edgy. Those are the feelings I get. I'm like, I just want to walk up and smack them. I'm sure everybody else wants to as well.
I I hope so. I hope so.
For
I
sure.
mean, that's why I take the position. I mean, the position. I mean, I don't even take a position. I am my position. I'm not taking on
Right.
anything. It's not like 10 years from now.
Mm-mm.
If this physical is still manifesting in this realm, is going to suddenly declare something else. When I look at the material and the subject itself, I see an aspect of this own being reflected back at me. So I don't feel like it's something I have to figure out. It's more about inquiring more information so I feel a sense, something that soothes me. People read spiritual works, religious works, in the hopes that it will soothe them. It's the same
Right.
thing with this. It soothes me because I can relate to it. I don't, but the minute you have to convince somebody, I don't try to convince anybody of anything.
Mm-mm.
They either get it or they don't. And if they don't get it, that's okay too. But if they're going to run with it into a direction that, to me, I mean, I'm not going to be like a fundamentalist and declare war because someone takes
Well, no.
something uh, that's uh, that's meaningful to me and try to thwart it. I'll just see, like, okay, that just tells me who they are in terms of, like,
Right.
they're not that mature in their awareness. They don't. There's not a lot of insight there. They haven't really dug deep enough to understand what they're toying with. It's just scratching the surface of things. They don't want to go deep. There's a way to combine the exoteric meaning, which is the obvious to
Yeah.
the general, and then with the esoteric, which is the deep. You can do both.
Yes.
And there's not too many people who know how to integrate the two, man. You can sell something to the public, more or less, that entertains and is intriguing and even, startling. And at the same time, it can have an intelligence and a
Mhm.
philosophy that speak to something that can also be mind blowing and,
Sure. It can be
without
very relatable.
without being preachy, can open people's mind to possibility, man. And sometimes when you do stuff like that, you get in trouble because last time I looked, all the
Of
men or
course.
women that were around in the world that wanted to communicate the possibility of change, they were murdered. Do you ever notice that? The men and
Mhm.
women that come to this realm that speak of a different way to live and to recognize each other as a community of man and to work together are taken out.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Very much so.
yeah. I mean, and I'm not a Christian, dude, but like Jesus
Right.
wasn't really celebrated in his time. They crucified him. Once the Romans and the Sanhedrin, the holy Jews of that time, figured out that he was affecting the people in such a way and saying things that challenged the status quo of the religious dogma that they were teaching at that time, when he said, and I think this is metaphorical, it's clearly a
Yeah.
metaphor. When he said, "You stand in front of the temple. You don't enter it, nor do you let anyone else enter it. You're blind guides, and you lead your brothers into the ditch." And I don't think he was talking about a physical temple. He was talking about a heart. You
Right.
may know the letter of the law and all these rituals and all this stuff, but you dried up old men, with no life in you. And so when he challenged a lot of the traditional law and declared a kingdom beyond what the Romans had realized in their pagan idolatry, he became dangerous on both sides of it, whether it was the Sanhedrin or Caesar himself. So they they set an example,
Right.
and so he was not. Now it's very convenient, just like with Charlie, but you know even with Charlie, man, everybody, a lot of people ran away. They snitched. Peter, Peter, who was given the keys to the kingdom by Jesus, supposedly according to the Bible,
Right. Right.
denied him 3 times. So there's parallels that I notice with people over time, that in their time they're not celebrated as anything. They're mocked. They were put to death. Paul was put in. He was Saul. He was put into prison. That's died there. Peter, the apostle, was crucified upside down. None
Right.
of these men who were heretics of that time were necessarily hailed as anything. They were constantly being challenged to see, well, what side of the faith do you stand on, Peter? Are you a Jew or are you a Christian? What are you? Are you a Gnostic? So they were always under fire. And I feel like anyone who is awake, truly awake, and
Hmm.
sees a vision of life that goes against the collective hallucination that everybody's having and dreaming this nightmare that we're all in, goes, we don't have to be in all this pain, man. Just wake up. What are you talking about? John Lennon said it best. War is over if you want it. He put
That's
big
right.
billboards all over the damn place. And then what did they do? They shot him. Sorry.
Anytime. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, or they become false idols, or deemed, like you said, a heretic. Anyone that ever made any true sense and really um, understood things so much better and showed you a different way. Well, the masses have to make sure that that goes away, because then suddenly, you know, they're worried about everyone following them instead of them, and it's like,
Well, the power pyramid collapses.
yep,
It's no longer vertical.
it's a
You know what I
limit.
mean? It's not this. It's everything's even.
Yep.
You know, and you have to
It's
work.
like every culture too.
Yeah, yeah,
If you don't believe this, if somebody else speaks out against it, or what we've convinced everybody to believe, whatever lie we want to tell them, better take them out, because we're starting to see everybody kind of turning this way. It's like a bad fucking cartoon.
yeah, yeah. And it has to play itself out. It has to exhaust itself, and one day it will. The
Mhm.
species will either find a way to grow and transcend itself, move on,
Right.
or it'll just die off. And life will continue. Life is eternal. So life will just remanifest itself in whatever form it wants to play cosmic spectacle with. Humans are just one experiment. They'll be
Right.
replaced with something else. Man, thinks somehow he is the center of all things. He may be connected to everything and one with everything in his root nature, his root being, but not as an
Mm.
ego, not as an ego, as an independent. Hey man, that's all nonsense. Death comes and goes. Hey man, time's up, game over. Take off the costume. If death is anything, it's the loss of face, not the
Yes.
gaining of face. It's the letting go of everything you've ever known, perceived to be a reality, and stepping into an aspect of being that's but there is no reference for. That's a true leap of faith, and letting go. If you do that now, the transition isn't so shocking. But if you're
Right.
identifying with these objects and my life and the reflection in the mirror and the fundamental conventional notions about what life is and material happening, and there's no spiritual eye open to see beyond what simply appears in the physical domain, that's all you're leaning on. So when the physical domain is taken, for some though, that's nirvana. It's like, yay, no more
Yeah.
physical. Wow, cool. This gravity, no more going, floating, flying, free. Just
Yeah.
wow,
It's like all that
expansive.
stress just.
It's all gone, man. No more flesh suit to deal with. No more object. None of this shit. It's like, yay. So it all depends,
People
where you're
forget that
at.
they don't come in this world that way. You're not in a flesh suit. You're just nothing more than a small celled organism. you
Yeah,
know
yeah. The
but it's
puppet.
like to let go of all that stress and not be bound to the woes, depending upon most people's positions.
Hmm.
Anything from being poor or being homeless, or the horrible nasty shit that you went through your whole fucking life. It's like to
Yeah,
be able to finally let go of all that and just be free.
yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
that's
I
a
think
revelation.
that's what it's about, man. That's why when Lynette said, Charlie took us away from our parents and gave us back to ourselves, makes complete sense to me, man. He wasn't trying to break will or maneuver anybody. Anybody who felt maneuvered wanted to be maneuvered. I just,
Right.
he reflected back whatever you gave him, man. So, if that's the trip you're on, then that's what you'll see. That's just like he, I think he just created a mirror, and what, and you should, that's it. So not,
Imparting wisdom to those that were willing to listen. No
yeah,
different, I think. When you mention Jesus there, or Odin himself, in the Norse sagas, his whole world was built on becoming or finding ultimate wisdom in all things.
hmm,
So, what's wrong with somebody trying to impart that? That makes you A cult leader? Nah. A cult leader has an agenda. They have something they want to accomplish. I don't feel that, from everything that any interview I've ever seen with Charlie, there was never an ego there. He was just more like a rock star spitting in the eye of the media, like, this is what you want me to be, so I'm going to give you crazy.
Yeah.
This is what you want. So fuck you.
Yeah.
Who can argue with that logic?
Yeah. But would you agree, Reaper, that you have to have some semblance of insight to be able to see what he was doing, rather than to look at it and go, "Oh, look, he's crazy." You have to have insight to recognize what you just pointed out as a profundity, man. That's a profound observation. But I don't know if everyone sees the same thing that you see. I see it. I see the same thing you do, but not everyone sees it that way. So I think
No, they definitely have to have that ability to look deeper.
Yeah.
And I encourage everybody out there. And by the way, I've seen.
Is there anyone out there?
Well, there's more out there than you think, brother. I just so caught up in conversation that I
no one's asked us any questions. That's why I thought they were all left and said, you know what, I'm time to go to sleep. It's late over where we're at.
No, I mean, there are so many new faces out in the comment section, the addict section. You guys are fucking unfucking believable. Love y'all. And I want to say welcome to everyone that has joined in. Nicole Butler Vegas is out there, and she invited a whole lot of people. Don't think I didn't notice, because I saw that shit.
Thanks, Nikki.
Lydia Manson is out there. Thank you for coming in. Yeah, everybody is still here, brother. I think we're making an impression, which is good, because this show is a place for like-minded individuals. It's not just the hysteria of Charlie Manson. It's not the mystique. It's more or less just giving you guys a different way to look at this, and it tells a lot about that time period leading up to today. Because if you don't think that shit is still going on, you're fucking blind. I'm just gonna say that, and I'm not sorry. It's got a different package. It's got a different label on it, and it's got a different box. That's it. Shit like this still happens. There, every time somebody needs to be saved that is a prominent figure, or maybe a figure, behind it all, that they're trying to protect. That shit still happens to this day. There's all kinds of mobs that run today. Is the Italian mafia at the head of everything in this country right now? Fuck no. Not like it was. I guarantee you that. We have the Russian mob. We have Yakuza. You name it. Somebody has a piece of everything, or has their hand in one pocket or another. It's all about who's got the biggest dough and the biggest influence. Straight up. That's real shit. I don't sugarcoat nothing. Mm-hmm. But back in those days, fucking hell, man, they had everything by the balls.
Yeah, they did.
So, but yeah, we encourage you guys. There's a little thing called YouTube. And there are quite a few video recordings that have been put up of some of these early Manson interviews. Check them out if you haven't. There's plenty of them. Read. It's one of the biggest things that I love that you said, Robert. Yeah. Open a fucking book, people. There's some seriously good journalists that actually take the time.
Yeah. There's enough information to put the pieces together to come up with some sort of picture that makes a lot more sense than what people have come up with. And I think that if they don't want to read, that's okay. Not everyone wants to read a book or has the time. As much time as people spend on their phones, they could spend the time researching radio interviews with Manson,
Man.
phone calls from prison where he speaks, candidly, and it's not
Mhm.
interrupted by any media, manipulation or anything like that. It's just him just talking. And so I encourage people to search out the interviews with him where he just talks, and especially him and Nicholas Schreck together speaking, or Nicholas Schreck talking about Manson is very important, I think, to understand. Even if you don't agree with Nick, because George Stimson doesn't agree with a lot of Nicholas Schreck's findings, but one thing's for sure is that Nicholas Schreck spent 30 years getting to know him, and basically was
That's a
able to
long
reach
time.
Charlie because of the music. He didn't say, "Look, I want to talk to you about the murders." He himself, Nicholas Schreck, is a musician, so he wanted to discuss music with him, and so they started with that, and it just went on from there. And Charlie wanted to be, I guess, recognized as a musician as well. And I think Nicholas clearly appreciated his music. And I would also recommend people to take the time to go on Spotify
Hmm.
and listen to Manson's music, man. Like listen to the lyrics and the composition of what's being sung. There's nothing satanic in it. There's nothing about killing anybody. There's
Nope.
nothing like that. None of the lyrics. They're all more like folk music
Yeah.
that speaks to, kind of like the gospel hymns of the, like Blind Willie Johnson. It's about, you know, overcoming, you know, whether, whatever it is, something, there's always some hell to go through. And
Yeah.
music is a way, is a catharsis to free yourself. Even if it's, you're singing about something sad, like in country music, it provides an outlet to get over stuff or express feelings that are bottled up in you. So I think Manson's music it calls out political things, social agreements in the world that don't make sense. It's very realized music, man. It's from an enlightened mind, not a sick, degenerate mind that's hell bent on gathering people up with kindness and ultimately going in for the kill. That's just somebody's misinterpretation of something, man. A few people's, and then we're very effective in doing that. And it's sad that still a lot of young people run with that to sell
For
something.
sure. Well, when you're being handed misinformation, that's what happens. Especially this generation. You hand them one thing and they just stick with it.
Well, they lack critical thinking, Reaper.
Nope.
Critical thinking suggests that you challenge it, you question authority, you question the media, you question everything. You look for
Hmm.
yourself to discover. People think that their own opinions are theirs. They're really, a lot of it's not.
Nope.
If they really did any real digging, they'd have to ask themselves, well, where'd you come up with that? What
Right.
research have you done? Where is this a feeling you have? Is this something your mother taught you? Is this something that's conditioned into you since you're a child to believe this, or else? Where's
Right.
all this stuff coming from, man? So once you start to deconstruct uh, the whole blueprint of your own mind, to ask yourself, who's doing the talking here, man? Is it me, or all the influences of people who try to either manipulate me or
Hmm.
actually guide me into something so I can come into realization on my own and not break my will? I don't know how many real free people there are in terms of their thinking. They're locked up in this torturous state of consciousness that suggests that they've been beaten a lot psychically throughout their lives, which I can relate
Hmm.
to. A lot of us can
Without
relate
even
to.
knowing it.
Yeah, and they tend to lean in the direction of familiarity and topics and things that,
Whatever feels comfortable.
yeah, but that doesn't mean that it's healthy or accurate. It just may be that they're just going to the well to get drunk all over again, to delude themselves that much more within
Yeah.
some type of phenomenon that speaks to a dysfunction of violence. And so they're revisiting a trauma and using entertainment and particular archetypes that have been miscommunicated in history
Hmm.
to revisit that and find an evil daddy or an evil mommy or this, and so I just like, dude, that's more of a something for the psychotherapist. That's not you being artistic, man. It may or may not be, depending on how you can. communicate that.
Right.
It can be useful,
Might be deemed
but
a madman.
say again, what? You what?
I
You
said
said it,
you might end up being deemed a madman at that
right.
point.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, I know we're running out of time, so I'll conclude. I just needed to say that.
No, absolutely, brother. I mean, I agree 1,010%.
Yeah,
People, are just not challenged. They're not encouraged to think for yourself, form your own opinion. Oh my goodness, could you imagine what that would bring if everyone looked at everything through their own looking glass and not someone else's?
yeah,
Um, to me, that's even more freeing of your mind because then, like you said, that critical thinking, uh, not just looking at what popular opinion is, but actually do the work. Do the work. Look, see what's there, and see what lies beneath it. Because if you look at pretty much any staple happening in the course of history, there's always more surrounding it than what you're fed.
yeah,
It's not just what your history teacher, taught you or what psychology 101 tells you, in college. If you look deeper, if you do the work, you just might see a different picture than what's presented to you.
yeah.
And before we send off here, Cody says, I remember reading that there was rumors of him writing Hotel California. Can you imagine? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think he did. And if he did, I bet you the Eagles stole it from him.
Yeah.
I guarantee it. Which is why Don Henley's able to, wipe his ass with fucking, Egyptian cotton fucking toilet paper right now.
Yeah, I know, dude, and I know this is probably not going to go over well in the horror community, but I don't give a shit. I'm not saying he's not a great film director, but I kind of was really disappointed in Mr. Zombie when he
Mm,
basically did that documentary and he started talking about Manson and basically said that he was, he just said not a lot of not nice things about him. And it's ironic to me that he basically borrowed a lot from the Manson well with the X on his forehead and if you look at his movies, The Devil's Rejects and a lot of this stuff, he's following the same blueprint that others have that revisits this idea of the family and making ugly and violent. I'm not saying the products themselves and what he
sure.
conjured was substandard. It was good product, but and which is fine. But the problem I had is that when he did a documentary and he was talking about Charlie Manson, he threw him
Right
under the
there.
fucking bus, dude. He threw him under the bus, and so fuck you, Rob Zombie, too, man, because you're not down. You're more worried about your fucking position and holding that position. You used him, used that Devil's Reject shit, which was all Vincent Bugliosi's twist on what the family's supposed to be. You
Mm,
ran with that shit. You put an X on your head. You got your long hair and you fucking had your head down. If that's not a Manson fucking projection or a Manson fucking wannabe, I don't know what is, which is good. You've got good taste, dude, to emulate, Charlie. But don't fucking do that. Make money, become rich, and the Rob Zombie guy, and then fucking throw him under the bus. Say, oh yeah, he was not really. He was a fucked up dude. Really? So then why did you fucking
why would you do
build?
that?
Why would you build a career off of him? That I has no. You're reading too much. And no, I'm not, dude. I'm not fucking stupid, bro. Come on. Are you kidding me?
He's a victim of sensationalism. That's what.
Yeah, bro. They just want to play it safe in the end. Fuck playing it safe. Fuck Hollywood. Fuck mainstream. Fuck the world, bro. I'm serious. I don't care. You see, I don't give a fuck. So I've been where I was gonna. I've been where I've been done. So now it's just if you really want to be independent, fucking radical, dude, then you got to be willing to take the ultimate risks. Fuck all the mafias that are running the game right now. I don't care what mafia that these mafias you're talking about, whether it's the Hollywood mafia. I won't give it certain categories because then I'll be, I won't be politically correct. So certain things I can't clearly say. I'd love to fucking say them, but I can't. But there's certain mafias that are running that shit. Fuck them too. Fuck them all, bro. I'm serious, you know. And I
No,
take my shades off so people can see. Not that 1,000 million people are gonna watch this, but I don't give a fuck who's watching it. I don't care what you fucking think. I don't care what you believe in. Fuck your gods. Fuck your heroes. Fuck all of them. Okay? That's all I needed to say. I need to get that off my chest, bro. I mean, not the audience, just the
not
people
the
who
audience.
believe, all the people that, you know what I mean?
The
Those
mindless
people
fucks.
that want to use this guy and all the one, all of us who've
Right.
been fucking our whole lives, been fucking nothing but a torture session, right? And then copy that, run with it, make money with it, and then, you know, go to the party and the red carpets and dress. Hey, dude, give me a fucking fucking gun. Give me a hatchet. Fucking, you want to really go there, dude? You want to make some real devils, some real reject devils, real devil, some real devils rejects, the real ones, not the play act ones, because I met all the fucking real ones. They were all a bunch of frauds. Sorry, fuck you guys too. I met you guys. You're fucking a little. Well, I need my trailer this way. Oh, I know. How come I didn't kiss my ass, motherfucker?
At
Yeah.
the end of the day, I'm
I
good
won't
with like,
mention any names, dude, but you think, you know, one's dead, another guy's a fucking prima donna. I was yelled at because I wasn't supposed to talk to the one guy who passed away. May Sid Haig rest in peace. I really
mm,
liked him, but I was told by this other motherfucking producer, Corpsey, oh, get out of here, Robert. I was just talking. I did a movie with Sid Haig years ago, and this fucking producer told me, get out of the room. And I'm in the scene with the guy, and then the director said, Robert, why did you walk away for, man? Well, that guy right over there, he told me to get out of the room, told me to stop. What? Oh, come here, take a picture with us. Sid and we all took a picture. But I ran into the guy again on one of the Mahal sets.
ah,
Yeah, I ain't gonna say anything else. But I feel a lot better. I felt a lot better now.
I
I,
bet.
I squared it. Trust me, I squared
I'm
it.
glad you did.
Yeah, yeah.
Shit.
So fuck him. But you know, so but you know, I'm not, don't get me wrong. If you're a fan of Rob Zombie's movies, his movies are really fucking good. I just don't confuse the message with the messenger. And if you throw
Right.
Charlie under the fucking bus and have used him to make something and borrow from that and make
Hmm.
a career out of shit, don't don't do that, dude. You're a fucking fraud. Like you, Tarantino, another one, trying to talk about
We
fucking
all know that.
we're talking about fucking, you know, fucking Steve McQueen, Sharon Tate. Steve McQueen had a love affair, dude. He really did.
We
He
did.
had a Jones, and it wasn't for Sharon Tate. You know what it was for? It was for cocaine, dude.
Right.
Cocaine and amyl nitrate, bro. That was his mistress. That's what he betrayed his wife for, not Sharon Tate, dude. That's fucking reality. But they
Oh,
won't
big
make
time.
those movies. They won't tell the history that way. They tell
No,
it
of
the
course
other
not.
way. And that's why, you know,
It wouldn't be popular. It wouldn't be painting him in a different light other than, oh, he was, such a
yeah,
wonderful human
but
being.
Steve McQueen was cool. He was a badass. He went through
He
fucking hell. He
was.
was the real deal. He died young. He got cancer. He lived a tortured life, man.
He
But he
did.
made something of it. He took that juvenile delinquency, that rage, that violence. He went into the military. He got out of the military. He made something with himself, man. Yeah, he hooked up with JC. He hooked up with some fucked up people. He got caught up in
Mhm.
it, and it ate him alive. Okay, he's human, dude. That's all it means. All it
Right.
means is he's fucking human.
No
The
such thing as
problem,
perfection.
that's it. People put some of these people on pedestals and make
They
them
do.
gods. Fuck, they're not. None of us are. We're all the same fucking human being, dude. We're all the same person. We are
What?
all, in that sense, the same. You know what I mean? We're
Very
God.
much so.
We are one. We are one in that
No
energy, in that
masters.
spirit, dude. There's no one particular Godhead
Nope.
above all of us. We're all that.
Nope.
You know
That's
what I
right.
mean? That's why Jesus said, I'm not even a Christian, dude. And Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you, dude. Don't look in the inner rooms. Don't look in the outer rooms. I'm not there, bro. You're not gonna find me outside or inside. You find it within yourself, bro. He actually said that shit. And maybe he didn't say it, but whoever wrote that, that makes a lot of sense to me, man. I dig it. And Moses came down with the tablets and looked around and said, what are you fucking people doing, bro? There's a right way to live. And he looked at Sodom and Gomorrah and said, okay, do your thing. And then next thing you know, they did their thing and they got extinct, you know? So I'm not saying it's the wrath of God. I'm just simply saying, like, You pay the piper, dude. You pay the piper. We all pay the piper. So you get the man in the mirror, you get your karma, good or bad, or something in the middle. There's no escaping it. And that's beautiful. Why escape it? Embrace it. Embrace it. Embrace that shit.
Well, honestly, that is very much the philosophy that I live by. The only person that you owe any explanation to is the one you see in the mirror.
Yeah.
You are your own judge, jury, and executioner as far as that's concerned.
You know what's cool, Reaper? You know what's fucking
Yes,
cool,
sir.
dude? When you stare at the mirror and there's no one there, that's when you know you're on to something. What's reflecting back doesn't correlate anymore. It's a
Right.
fucking mirage. When you start getting to that vibration, dude, you're on to something.
Absolutely.
When nothing stares back at you, dude.
Now,
free.
the one thing I was going to say, back to the Rob Zombie part, without a doubt, that's what separates Hollywood from the underground. The underground doesn't fucking care. There is none of that. There is no this, that I need to have this plush toilet, or I better have my fucking ham sandwich waiting for me. We don't care. We care about the art. We leave our heart, our soul, our blood on whatever the fuck we do. It doesn't matter necessarily. I mean, sure, you motherfuckers got to eat, got to make a living, but at the end of the day, dude, it's about the fucking art, and that's why I will never. I don't even care if I was given the opportunity. I'll never, ever do a mainstream production. I don't care.
Yeah.
That's not where my heart is.
Brother, these days you don't want to. Look at what they're putting out. You don't want to, man.
Nope.
You don't want to.
Absolutely, man. None of us do. So anybody out there that is, in the trenches trying to guerrilla, fucking movies and shit, my hat's off to you. Keep doing what you do. Man. Yeah. But most importantly, keep loving your heart. And remember that just because you don't understand something doesn't mean that it isn't something. Maybe it challenges you. And that's what everybody truly, truly needs. And you guys out there in the comment section have just been fucking utterly amazeballs. Absolutely love y'all. And until next time, kiddies, make sure to, open a book, dig deeper, do your research before looking at something, because you just might have it wrong. Most importantly, stay heavy.
Thank you for joining us on Reapers Underground. Stay tuned for more from Black Flame Ministries.